Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are stripping away the veneer of the legitimate economy. We're stepping away from the stock tickers, the quarterly earnings reports, all the shiny corporate stuff, and we're going into the shadows.
The financial underworld. It sounds like the title of a thriller novel, doesn't it?
It really does.
But as we went through these sources, specifically the certification material on anti-money laundering, what struck me is just how bureaucratic the fight against it actually is. It's this high-stakes game of cat and mouse. But the cat isn't some super spy.
No.
It's a committee in Paris.
That's exactly it. You know, usually when we talk about finance, we're talking about how to make money, how to grow wealth. Today, we're looking at the dark mirror image of that system. We're talking about how drug cartels, terrorists, and, corrupt officials move their money around the world.
And, more importantly, we're talking about the global referee that is trying to stop them.
Exactly. So we're doing a deep dive into the Financial Action Task Force, or the FATF.
Right. And we are going to connect the dots between this big policymaking body and a massive blind spot in the global financial system, something called trade-based money laundering.
I have to admit, before digging into these sources, especially Chapter 8 of the material, which is all about the FATF and its recommendations, I had a very Hollywood image of money laundering. I pictured guys with duffel bags of cash meeting in parking lots, or maybe a hacker in a hoodie wiring money to the Cayman Islands while typing furiously.
Sure, the classic stuff.
But the trade-based stuff, that blew my mind.
It's the frontier. I mean, the banking system has gotten so tight over the last 20 years, and that's largely because of the FATF, which we'll get into.
Yeah.
The criminals have had to get creative.
They've moved on.
They've moved from the teller window to the shipping container.
So here's our mission for this deep dive. We're going to start at the top. Who sets the rules for the world? Because money laundering, it doesn't respect borders.
Not at all.
A drug deal in Colombia might be paid for with euros in Spain, laundered through a bank in Asia, and end up as real estate in Miami. So who is the sheriff in that scenario? That is the FATF.
And we're going to unpack their 40+9 recommendations, which really form the backbone of global security.
And we won't just list them. We need to understand why they exist.
Exactly. Because Chapter 8 isn't just a list of rules, it's a response. It's a reaction to specific vulnerabilities that criminals were exploiting time and time again.
Right. Then we're going to pivot to the really high-stakes geopolitics, the gray list and the blacklist. These are terms you hear on the news, usually followed by a country's currency crashing, but we're going to explain what they actually mean.
And finally, we're going to spend a good chunk of time on trade-based money laundering. We're talking about phantom shipments, over-invoicing, and this incredible mechanism called the black market peso exchange.
It is fascinating and, frankly, terrifying in equal measure.
So let's set the stage. The sources we have today are dense. This isn't just theory. This is the operational playbook for compliance officers and government officials.
It is the rule book. If you want to understand how the world fights financial crime, you absolutely have to understand the FATF.
So let's start with the basics. What exactly is this organization? Is it some kind of global police force? Do they have badges and, jurisdiction to kick down doors in sovereign nations?
No badges, no guns, no handcuffs. The Financial Action Task Force, or FATF, is an intergovernmental organization, and it is strictly a policy-making body.
Okay, so they're thinkers, not doers, in a sense.
You can think of them as the architects. They don't arrest people themselves. They design the net that catches the criminals.
And where do they come from? Because they seem to wield an immense amount of power for a group that doesn't have an army.
It started back in 1989. The G7 summit was happening in Paris. And the context here is really important. Think about 1989. The Cold War is winding down.
But the war on drugs is at its absolute peak. You have the rise of the mega cartels in Latin America, moving cocaine by the ton.
Right. The whole Miami Vice era, cash was just flooding everywhere. I remember reading stories about cartels literally burying cash in fields because they couldn't launder it fast enough.
They couldn't, exactly. The world leaders realized they had a massive, massive problem. The drug trade was exploding, and the proceeds, we're talking billions and billions of dollars, were washing through the global banking system.
And that's destabilizing.
It's incredibly destabilizing. If a drug lord has more liquid cash than a national bank, that's a problem for democracy. So the G7 created the FATF with a very specific, very narrow initial mandate to tackle money laundering.
So 1989, it's about drug money. It's about protecting the banks from being used by, narcos to hide their profits.
Correct. But organizations evolve. and the FATF had to evolve rapidly. The biggest shift, without a doubt, happened in 2001.
Post 9/11.
Right. After the September 11 attacks, the paradigm shifted overnight. Before 2001, money laundering was all about hiding the source of funds. Criminals made money illegally, selling drugs,
Right.
running guns, and they wanted it to look legal.
Dirty money trying to look clean. That's the classic definition, right?
Precisely. But with terrorism, the dynamic is often reversed. The money might be clean. It could come from a legitimate charity, a donation, a salary, or business profits, but it is being used for a dirty purpose.
That's a crucial distinction. The goal isn't necessarily profit, it's ideology. The 9/11 hijackers didn't need to launder millions for a yacht.
No.
They just needed to move relatively small amounts of money to pay for flight school and tickets without getting caught.
Exactly. So in October 2001, just weeks after the attacks, the FATF expanded its mandate to include CFT combating the financing of terrorism. They had to build a framework that could catch both: the drug lord hiding his profits and the terrorist self-funding an operation.
And looking at the sources, they didn't stop there. In 2019, the FATF ministers gave the body an open-ended mandate. What does that mean in practical terms?
Before 2019, the FATF was technically temporary. It had a fixed lifespan, and it had to be renewed by the ministers periodically. The open-ended mandate was the world admitting, look, this problem isn't going away.
It's permanent.
Money laundering and terror financing are enduring threats. And importantly, they added a third pillar, countering the financing of proliferation.
Proliferation, what are we talking about here?
Weapons of mass destruction, WMDs, nuclear, chemical, biological weapons. We're talking about sanctions, evasion by rogue states trying to build nuclear programs or other nasty things.
Wow.
So now you have a holy trinity of financial threats that Chapter 8 really outlines: money laundering, terrorist financing, and proliferation financing.
Okay, so we have the architect, we have the mandate, but here is the million-dollar question. How do they actually force countries to listen? If they don't have an army, why does a country like, hypothetically, Turkey or Pakistan or even a major economy care what a committee in Paris thinks?
Peer pressure. But it's peer pressure with a sledgehammer. The FATF uses a system of mutual evaluations.
Okay.
They send a team into a country and they audit the entire system. They look at the laws, the police effectiveness, the banking regulations. They check if the 40 recommendations we mentioned are actually being implemented.
And this is where we get the famous lists.
This is where you get the lists.
Yes.
If a country is found to be slacking, if they have what's called strategic deficiencies, they get put on the gray list. The formal name, which is quite polite, is jurisdictions under increased monitoring.
We see this in the geopolitical news cycle all the time. Country X added to gray list. It sounds almost like a warning shot.
It is, but it's a warning shot that hits the wallet. Being on the gray list means the FATF has found problems. Maybe your banks aren't reporting suspicious transactions, or you don't know who owns your shell companies. But, and this is key, the country is committed to resolving them swiftly within an agreed time frame.
So it's like academic probation. We see you're failing, you promise to do better, but we are going to watch you like a hawk.
That's a perfect analogy. And while it sounds bureaucratic, it has real economic teeth. When a country is gray listed, international banks get very nervous.
I can imagine.
Standard Chartered, JP Morgan, HSBC, they all look at that country and say, this is high risk. The compliance costs of doing business here just went up.
Which means they might pull out or charge more for services.
Both. It becomes harder to get loans from the IMF or World Bank. Correspondent banking relationships, the lifeblood of international finance get cut. It just squeezes the economy. It's a massive signal to foreign investors to stay away.
And then there's the nuclear option, the blacklist.
The high-risk jurisdictions. These are countries with serious deficiencies that often aren't cooperating or, not making any real progress. Historically, this has included countries like North Korea or Iran.
What happens when you hit the blacklist? Is it just a stiffer warning?
No, it's isolation. The FATF essentially tells the rest of the world, protect yourselves. They urge members to apply what they call enhanced due diligence and even countermeasures.
Countermeasures sounds aggressive.
It is. It's essentially financial quarantine. It can cut a country off from the global banking system almost entirely. You cannot wire money in or out easily. Credit cards stop working internationally. It completely isolates the nation.
So the FATF doesn't have a police force, but they can effectively shut down a country's economy by telling everyone else to stop doing business with them. That is soft power with very, very hard consequences.
Exactly. And that is why countries fight so hard to stay off these lists.
Okay, so that's the who and the how of the organization. Now let's talk about the what. The source material, Chapter 8 specifically, spends a lot of time on the 40 recommendations. This is the actual playbook, right?
It is. The FATF issued 40 recommendations to act as the global standard. Now, here is the nuance. They are designed to be flexible. The FATF knows that the legal system in India is different from the legal system in France or the US.
Right, one size doesn't fit all.
Not at all. So the FATF sets the standard, the outcome that needs to be achieved,
Yeah.
and the countries have to adapt their domestic laws to meet it.
Like the PMLA, the Prevention of Money Laundering Act in India. That's the local version of these global rules.
Precisely. If you read the PMLA, you will see the DNA of the FATF recommendations in almost every single clause.
Let's walk through the key areas of these 40 recommendations. We don't need to recite all 40. That would be a very long deep dive. But there are 7 main buckets or themes that Chapter 8 highlights. I want to understand how these actually change what happens on the ground at a bank or a police station.
Sure. The first bucket is AML CFT policies and coordination. Now, this sounds dry, but it introduces the most important concept in modern compliance: the risk-based approach.
Unpack that for us. What is the risk-based approach?
Well, in the old days, compliance was a checklist. You treated every customer the same. If I opened an account, or if a multinational corporation opened an account, the checks were roughly similar. But that's incredibly inefficient.
All right.
The risk-based approach says, identify where your biggest risks are and put your resources there.
So if I'm a bank manager, I shouldn't treat the grandmother opening her first savings account the same way I treat an anonymous offshore shell company trying to move millions of dollars.
Exactly. Don't waste time frisking the grandmother. Spend your time and your best analysts investigating the shell company. It forces institutions and countries to assess their specific risks. Maybe for one country it's drug trafficking, for another it's corruption, and then apply resources accordingly.
Okay, makes sense. Bucket number 2, money laundering and confiscation.
This deals with the law itself. Countries must define money laundering as a crime. It seems obvious now, but remember, before the 80s, money laundering wasn't always a specific crime in itself. You got them for the drugs, but not for the money movement.
Interesting.
This recommendation also gives authorities the power to seize assets.
This is key, isn't it? If a drug lord buys a yacht with dirty money or a mansion, the government needs the legal authority to take the yacht.
And the money. Because if they keep the money, they can just restart the whole operation from prison. You have to bleed the organization dry. Confiscation is the ultimate deterrent. It hits them where it hurts.
Bucket 3 covers terrorist financing and proliferation.
This links back to that post-9/11 mandate we talked about. It requires targeted sanctions.
Yeah.
So if the UN Security Council designates person X as a terrorist, countries need a legal mechanism to freeze their funds immediately.
Immediately.
Not next week, not after court hearing, immediately. Speed is of the essence here. You have to stop that money before it can be used for an attack.
Bucket 4 is preventative measures. This is the one that affects anyone listening who has ever opened a bank account.
Yes. This is the home of CDD customer due diligence. It mandates that financial institutions must know who they are dealing with. No anonymous accounts, no fake names.
Know your customer. KYC. The reason I have to bring my passport and a utility bill just to open a simple checking account?
That's the one. And crucially, it says that bank secrecy laws cannot block investigations. A bank in Switzerland or the Caymans or anywhere else can't simply say, oh, sorry, we protect our client's privacy when the police are investigating terror financing.
That's a huge shift.
It's massive. The FATF essentially declared that the era of total impenetrable bank secrecy is over. The veil has to be peerable for valid investigations.
That leads right into bucket 5, transparency and beneficial ownership. This is a huge buzzword in the industry right now. Why is beneficial ownership so hard to track down?
Because criminals are experts at layering. They create a company in one jurisdiction, which is owned by a company in another, which is owned by a trust in some island nation. It's like a set of Russian nesting dolls.
So on paper, it just looks like a faceless corporation owning another faceless corporation.
Exactly. So beneficial ownership rules say, we don't care about the companies, we want to know the human being, the warm body at the end of the chain.
The person who's actually pulling the strings.
The ultimate beneficial owner, or UBO. The FATF is pushing very, very hard for global registries of these UBOs, so you can't hide behind a paper company anymore. They want to know who actually controls the funds.
Okay, bucket 6 is powers of authorities.
This just ensures that law enforcement has the right tools for the job subpoena powers, access to documents, the ability to compel witnesses. You can't ask the police to fight sophisticated financial crime with one hand tied behind their back. It also covers the role of supervisors, the government bodies that check if banks are actually following all these rules.
And finally, bucket 7, international cooperation.
Critical, absolutely critical. As we said, crime is global. If a criminal moves money from Mumbai to London to New York, the police in those 3 cities need to be able to talk to each other.
Seamlessly.
Ideally, yes. This recommendation sets up the frameworks for mutual legal assistance treaties, MLATs, and extradition. It creates the pipelines for information to flow between governments.
It's really a comprehensive net when you lay it all out like that. Legal definition, prevention at the bank, police powers, and the international link-up.
That's the theory. It's supposed to be watertight.
But wait, we called it the 40 plus 9. We've covered the 40. What are the 9 special recommendations?
Ah, yes. These were the ones added specifically for terrorist financing after 9/11. They are now integrated into the main list in the source material, but historically they are distinct because they address the unique ways terrorists move money around.
Give us the highlights. What makes terrorist financing so different from regular money laundering?
Well, let's look at Special Recommendation 6. It deals with alternative remittance.
Is this like the Hawala system?
Exactly. Informal value transfer systems. In many parts of the world, South Asia, the Middle East, parts of Africa, people move money without using traditional banks. They use a network of brokers based entirely on trust. It's efficient, it's cheaper than banks, and it's faster.
But it's a black hole for
It's
regulators.
a total black hole.
Yeah,
Because there's no wire transfer record. It's just a phone call or a message.
right.
The FATF says you can't just ignore these. You have to license them or register them. You have to bring the shadow banking system into the light. If you're in the business of moving money, you need to be regulated, even if you don't look like a traditional bank.
And then there's the travel rule, that special recommendation SIFT. This one sounds like a huge headache for tech companies and banks.
It is a massive headache, but it's vital. It says that when money travels via wire transfer, the information about who sent it, their name, their address, their account number, must travel with the money through the entire payment chain.
So if the money hops through 3 intermediary banks, say from New York to Frankfurt to Dubai, the sender info has to stay attached at every step. It can't get stripped off.
Correct. Otherwise, you end up with a pile of money at the destination and you have no idea where it originated. It completely breaks the audit trail. This is a particularly hot topic right now in the world of cryptocurrency, where the FATF is trying to enforce this very same rule.
Yeah, I can imagine. Now, one that really stood out to me in the source material was Special Recommendation 8 regarding nonprofit organizations, or NPOs.
This is a very sensitive area. We're talking about charities.
Why are charities a target? That seems, well, it seems wrong.
It does, but you have to look at the data. Terrorist organizations exploit NPOs in 2 main ways. One, they pose as legitimate charities to raise funds. They'll have a website, they'll say donate to help the orphans or rebuild the schools, but the money goes to buy weapons.
It's just a front organization.
Yes. The second way is infiltration. You have a real charity doing good work, but an employee or a branch manager diverts a portion of the funds to a terrorist group without the donors ever knowing.
Wow.
So the FATF requires countries to audit their nonprofit sector to prevent this kind of abuse.
It's incredibly cynical, isn't it, to use the goodwill of people who want to help, to fund violence.
It is, but it's a reality the FATF has to deal with. And finally, Special Recommendation IX deals with cash couriers.
The guys with the suitcases?
Exactly. The physical cross-border transportation of currency. You know, when you fly internationally and the customs form asks if you are carrying more than, say, $10,000 in cash or bearer negotiable instruments.
I always check no, sadly. I'm usually carrying about $40 and some pocket lint.
As do most of us.
Mm-hmm.
But that question is there specifically because of FATF Special Recommendation IX. Countries need a declaration system to detect bulk cash smuggling. If you can't wire the money because of the travel rule, well, you might try to fly it out in a suitcase. This is meant to close that loop.
So let's look at the picture we've painted so far. We have the FATF, we have the gray list and the black list. We have 40 plus 9 recommendations locking down banks, wire transfers, charities, and cash. It feels like the financial system is a fortress. If I try to move dirty money, a bell should ring somewhere, right?
And that is exactly why the criminals have moved on.
Ah, the balloon effect. You squeeze it in one place, it bulges out in another.
Precisely. If you make it nearly impossible to deposit $1 million cash in a bank and impossible to wire it without getting flagged, where do you go? You go to the one place where moving massive value is standard operating procedure every single day.
International trade.
And this brings us to the blind spot we teased at the beginning of the show. Segment 4, trade-based money laundering, or TBML.
The source material calls this the shift from following the money to following the value. That's a profound shift in thinking. What does it mean?
Think about it this way. If I send you $1 million to the banking system, it creates a very clear digital footprint. The bank asks, what is this for? There are all sorts of checks. But what if, instead of sending money, I send you value in the form of goods?
Go on.
Let's say I want to move $1 million of illegal drug money from country A to country B. I can take that dirty cash and use it to buy $1 million worth of legitimate goods, let's say tractors in country A. I then ship the tractors to you in country B. You sell them. Now you have the clean money.
And to the banking system, it just looks like I sold some tractors. It's legitimate commerce.
Exactly. It looks like business. And the scale of global trade is what makes this so incredibly attractive to criminals. Global merchandise trade is over $9 trillion a year. Services are another $2 trillion on top of that.
That is a massive, massive haystack to hide your needle in.
It's worse than that. Here is the kicker statistic from our source. Research suggests that most customs agencies physically inspect less than 5% of all cargo shipments.
Wait, say that again? Less than 5%.
Less than 5%. So 95% of shipping containers are just passing through.
They check the paperwork, sure. But physically opening the box, almost never. It would bring global commerce to a grinding halt if they opened every single box. So you see the problem. We aren't just looking for a needle in a haystack. We aren't even looking at the haystack. That is terrifying. So the criminals have realized that the trade system is the path of least resistance. It's complex, it's huge, and it's largely unscrutinized compared to the banking sector.
Correct. And they have developed some very specific, and I have to say, very clever techniques to exploit it.
Let's get into the how-to, segment 5. The techniques of TBML. The simplest one seems to be just manipulating the invoice.
Right. Over-invoicing and under-invoicing. This is basically just lying about the price of goods to transfer value.
Give me a concrete example of over-invoicing. Let's role-play this. You are the bad guy exporter. I am the bad guy importer. How does it work?
Okay. So imagine you are in a country with strict currency controls. You can't just wire money out. Or maybe you just want to move illegal profits to a tax haven. You and I collude. I am the exporter, you are the importer. I ship you a container of goods that are actually worth $1 million. But I create an invoice, a piece of paper, that says they're worth $2 million.
So on the official paperwork, it says these goods cost $2 million. I take that invoice to my bank.
Right. You show them the official invoice. The bank says, okay, you're paying $2 million for goods, looks legitimate. You transfer me $2 million. I receive the $2 million. The goods I sent you are only worth $1 million. So I have effectively moved an extra $1 million of value from your country to mine, and it's all disguised as a legitimate payment for goods.
And under-invoicing is just the reverse?
Yes. If I want to transfer value to you, I ship you goods worth $1 million, but I only invoice you for, say, $100,000. You pay me that small amount. You receive the goods, you sell them for their real market value of $1 million, and you get to keep the $900,000 difference.
That seems, it seems almost too simple. Doesn't customs notice that, for instance, a brand new Ferrari is being invoiced for $500?
Sometimes, with obvious things like cars, yes. But remember the sheer volume. And remember that pricing is subjective. If I'm shipping specialized electronic components or industrial chemicals or textile samples, who is the customs officer to say if they're worth $10 per kilo or $1,000 per kilo?
That's a good point.
Especially if they are just one small part of a massive container filled with mixed goods. Unless you're an expert in that specific product, the price on the paper looks plausible.
Right, and then there's multiple invoicing.
This is even lazier, in a way. I ship you one single container of goods, but I send you 3 different identical invoices for that same container. You use invoice A at Bank X, invoice B at Bank Y, and invoice C at Bank Z.
So you pay me 3 times for one shipment of goods.
And unless the banks are talking to each other, which they usually don't for privacy and competitive reasons, they have no idea the other payments exist.
Then we have the more physical methods, over and under shipment.
This is where you manipulate the quantity, not just the price. I invoice you for 1,000 units of something, but I only actually load 500 units into the container. Or I load 2,000. But the most extreme version of this, and the most brazen, is the phantom shipment.
Phantom shipment. It sounds like a ghost story for supply chains.
It effectively is. No goods are shipped at all. I create a fake bill of lading, a fake customs declaration, a fake invoice. I send you all the official-looking paperwork. You take it to the bank, you pay me. The bank sees the paperwork and processes the payment.
But the shipping container doesn't even exist. Or it's empty.
Or if it does exist, it's empty. Or it's filled with rocks.
Right.
Or scrap metal to match the declared weight.
That is incredibly bold. They are literally trading air.
They are trading lies. And because banks deal in documents, not goods, banks don't send an employee down to the docks to check the crates. It works. The bank's reality is the paper. If the paper matches, the money moves.
The source also mentions falsely described goods. This is the classic bait and switch.
Right. I invoice you for luxury Swiss watches, and the price reflects that. But inside the crate, it's just cheap plastic knockoffs. Or bricks.
Bricks. Really?
It have happened. If the weight on the shipping manifest matches, and nobody opens the box, the paperwork clears.
And this must get even harder with services, doesn't it?
Oh, services are the black hole of value. How do you value market research or consulting fees? If I'm a shell company and I charge your company $1 million for a 50-page report on market trends, is that money laundering, or am I just a really expensive bad consultant?
It's very, very hard for authorities to prove that the value is fake.
Exactly. With a car, there's a market price. With strategic advice, the price is whatever we agree it is. That ambiguity is a money launderer's best friend.
Now, these techniques we've discussed, the invoicing, the phantom shipments, they usually imply that the importer and the exporter are in on it together. They're colluding. They're both criminals.
Usually, yes. That's the basic model.
Well,
But it can get much, much more complex. And this brings us to segment 6, complex schemes and the infamous black market peso exchange.
the BMPE. The source material highlights this as a major case study. It originated with Colombian drug cartels, but the mechanism is used globally now, right?
Yes, absolutely. The genius and the evil of the black market peso exchange is that it does not require the importer and the exporter to be partners in crime. They might not even know each other. They might both be legitimate business people.
Walk us through this. This feels like the plot of a sophisticated movie. Let's break it down step by step.
Okay, let's visualize it. Step 1. A drug cartel sells cocaine in the U.S. They now have a mountain of cash U.S. dollars sitting in a warehouse in Miami or New York. This is their problem. They can't just deposit it because of all the FATF rules we just discussed.
Right.
And honestly, they don't want dollars in New York. They want pesos in Colombia to pay their soldiers, their bribes, and their living expenses.
Okay. Problem. Dirty dollars in the U.S. goal. Clean pesos in Colombia.
Step 2. A peso broker enters the chat. This is the middleman. He goes to Colombia and finds a legitimate businessman. Let's say this businessman is an importer who sells refrigerators in Bogota. This importer needs U.S. dollars to buy his inventory from a manufacturer in the U.S.
Why does the importer need the broker? Why doesn't he just go to a bank to get his dollars?
Well, maybe the official exchange rate at the bank is bad. Maybe there are strict currency controls or high taxes, or maybe dollars are just scarce. The peso broker comes along and says, hey, I can get you the U.S. dollars you need to buy those refrigerators, and I'll give them to you at a discount, a better rate than the bank, no paperwork.
That sounds like a good deal. So the importer takes it. He pays the broker in clean, legitimate pesos in Colombia.
Exactly. Now the broker has the pesos. He gives those pesos to the drug cartel.
The cartel is happy. They have their clean money in their home currency in Colombia.
Correct. So what's left? The broker now has the dirty drug dollars sitting in the U.S. He takes those dirty dollars and uses them to pay the U.S. refrigerator manufacturer on behalf of the Colombian importer.
Whoa. Okay, so let me get this straight. The U.S. manufacturer gets paid. They ship the refrigerators to Colombia. The Colombian importer gets his goods. The cartel gets their pesos. Everyone seems happy.
And the money laundering happened through the trade of the refrigerators. The U.S. manufacturer thinks they are just being paid for an export. They might think the payment came from some kind of financing agent or a third-party logistics company. The Colombian importer might just think he got a good deal on currency exchange. But the value isn't swapped.
That is incredibly sophisticated. It uses a completely legitimate trade transaction to settle the books of the drug trade. The refrigerators are real, the shipment is real, the payment looks real.
Exactly. It's a value swap.
Oh.
And because the goods are legal and priced correctly, the customs inspectors see absolutely nothing wrong. It creates a complete disconnect between the movement of goods and the movement of money. It leverages the legitimate economy to wash the illegitimate one.
It really highlights the systemic vulnerability. We have this massive volume of trade, the incredible complexity of financing, and very limited scrutiny. It's a perfect storm.
And the biggest vulnerability of all, as mentioned in our sources, is the fundamental lack of data exchange.
Right. The U.S. Customs computer doesn't necessarily talk to the Colombian Customs computer in real time.
Exactly. If the U.S. side sees an export of refrigerators declared at $500 each and the Colombian side sees an import declared at $500 each, it looks fine. But if the U.S. side sees a declaration of $2,000 and the Colombian side sees $500, that's a massive red flag for fraud. But without sharing data, they can't see the discrepancy.
So how do we fix this? That leads us to our last section, segment 7, the global network. The FATF is based in Paris, but it can't watch every port and every bank in the world.
No, it relies on a network, the global network. This consists of FATF-style regional bodies, or FSRBs.
It sounds like a franchise model.
In a way, it is, yeah. The FATF sets the global standard. The FSRBs are responsible for implementing it and monitoring it in their own regions. For example, India is a member of the FATF directly, but it's also a key member of the APG, the Asia-Pacific Group, and the EAG, the Eurasian Group.
And there are others all over the world. Menafati for the Middle East, Moneyfile for Europe, JABA for West Africa, GIFLOT for Latin America. It really covers the globe.
The idea is that these regional bodies understand the local context better. They can conduct peer reviews of countries in their region and ensure the standards are being met on the ground. They are the eyes and ears. They ensure that the 40 recommendations aren't just words on a piece of paper in Paris, but are actually being enforced in Mumbai and Lagos and Singapore.
But the key to stopping the trade-based money laundering, as you mentioned, is cooperation. The source talks about MOUs and MLATs. These acronyms seem absolutely vital.
They are. MOUs are Memoranda of Understanding. These are basically agreements between agencies like the Financial Intelligence Units, or FIUs, of two different countries to share information. I'll show you my suspicious transaction data if you show me yours.
MLATs.
Mutual Legal Assistance Treaties. These are more formal, legally binding agreements between countries to help with investigations and prosecutions. If I'm a prosecutor in Germany and I need to interview a witness in your country, or get bank records from a bank in your country for a court case, the MLAT is the legal mechanism that allows me to do it.
And specifically for TBML, customs to customs sharing.
That is the holy grail for stopping trade-based money laundering. If customs agencies share their export and import data systematically in real time, they can spot the phantom shipments and the pricing anomalies almost instantly. If I claim I shipped you $1 million in goods, but your customs system says nothing ever arrived, you're caught.
It seems so obvious in the age of the internet, but I guess national sovereignty and just plain old bureaucracy get in the way.
And privacy laws and data protection laws and just incompatible computer systems from the 1980s. But it is the direction the FATF is pushing very hard. They are trying to build a digital bridge between the trade world and the finance world. They are urging countries to create trade transparency units, or TTUs, specifically to analyze this data.
So let's bring this all together. We started with the FATF, the global architect in Paris. We looked at the lists, gray and black, that effectively shame countries into compliance. We walked through the 40+9 recommendations that act as the global playbook for fighting financial crime.
We saw how the FATF has had to evolve, from fighting drug lords in the 80s to fighting terrorists post 9/11, and now fighting the financing of weapons of mass destruction.
And then we saw how, despite all that, the balloon effect has pushed sophisticated criminals into the massive, chaotic, and undersupervised world of international trade,
where they use phantom shipments, fake invoices, and these incredibly complex schemes like the black market peso exchange to wash trillions of dollars right under our noses.
It makes you realize that money laundering isn't just one thing. It's a living, breathing ecosystem that evolves just as fast as the laws do.
It is an ongoing battle. As the FATF tightens the screws on the banks, the criminals find new avenues. Trade is the current frontier. But who knows what's next? I mean, crypto is obviously a huge part of the conversation now, too, which the FATF is also trying to address under its new technologies recommendation. The job is never done.
It really makes you look at the world differently. Next time I'm at a port or I see a freight train rolling by with those double-stacked containers, I'm not just going to see commerce. I'm going to be thinking about what's really in those boxes.
You have to wonder.
Is it full of goods or is it full of lies?
And that is the question every customs officer, every compliance banker, and every financial intelligence unit needs to be asking every single day.
This has been a fascinating deep dive It's a big scary, sure, but it's also, I guess, reassuring to know that there is this global architecture, the FATF and its network, that is trying to hold the line.
They are the unsung heroes of global security. It's not glamorous work. It's reading spreadsheets, checking invoices, sitting in plenary meetings, but it keeps the system from collapsing under the weight of crime.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for guiding us through the very murky waters of the financial underworld today.
My pleasure. It's always good to shine a light in the dark corners.
And to our listeners, thank you for tuning in. We hope this gave you a new perspective on how the world works and how it's protected. Join us next time for another deep dive. Until then, stay curious.
And stay compliant.
Yes, definitely stay compliant. Goodbye, everyone.